Welcome to the Raise Podcast. I'm Coral.
And I'm Natalie.
And we're here to help you raise your game whilst raising the next generation.
We want to help put the power in your hands and inspire you to live your life the way you choose. Ready to raise some questions?
Well, so are we.
Hello, everyone. On today's episode of the Raise Podcast, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Jenny Goodman, a pioneering doctor who takes a holistic approach to health and wellness. Dr. Goodman is the author of two powerful books, Staying Alive in Toxic Times and Getting Healthy in Toxic Times, which explore how environmental toxins impact our bodies and how we can take control of our health in today's modern world. With a deep commitment to ecological medicine, she blends traditional medical knowledge with natural healing practices, offering practical advice for thriving in a world that often feels overwhelmed by pollution, chemicals, and other harmful environmental factors. Dr. Goodman is here to share her wisdom on how we can detox, protect our health, and make informed choices for both our well-being and the planet.
And you decided to become a doctor at a very young age, didn't you? At what point did you decide to take a more holistic approach to medicine?
Well, that's a really good question. I would say that throughout my time at medical school, I knew there was something wrong with the training. I knew I was profoundly uncomfortable with some aspects of it, but I could not have articulated what was wrong, and I certainly couldn't have articulated what was missing. I just knew that I'd gone into medicine to learn how to make sick people better, but also, I thought, to learn what the causes of illness were, and therefore how to prevent illness. They didn't teach me that. So I did know that that was missing, but I didn't know that it existed. I thought that what I was being taught was all there was. And so I found it very difficult. I found it very painful. And I worked as a junior hospital doctor for a while. What I loved was A&E, or casualty as we called it then, because they were dealing with emergencies and everything I was being asked to do needed to be done, right? So there's no question. If somebody's cut themselves, you stitch up the wound. You know, if someone's broken their leg, you fix it. So in a way, that's what medicine does best. And that's what I was most comfortable doing. But I did eventually leave profoundly disillusioned because they weren't really helping the vast majority of patients who had chronic degenerative diseases. I mean, yes, if you've had a heart attack, you want orthodox medicine to give you a stent and get the blood flowing to your heart muscle again. But they don't look into why you had a heart attack. They give you half a dozen drugs, which make pharmaceutical companies immensely rich, but do not make you healthier. So they weren't addressing root causes, diabetes, dementia, cancer, all what I would call the real pandemics of today, the diseases that have increased in amount exponentially in the past 150, 200 years. So I left, and for many years I was teaching conventional medical sciences, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, and so on, to practitioners of alternative medicine, people who were training to do homeopathy, herbalism, osteopathy, massage, acupuncture, and so on. But I didn't feel pulled to do any of those modalities, with the exception of herbalism, which actually I think is the true medicine. So eventually, I thought I was done with medicine. I went off and did a master's degree in psychotherapy. I worked as a counsellor for some years at the Hammersmith Hospital. And then I had my kids, so my brain turned to mush for a period of time, as it does. This is normal. And when I emerged from early motherhood, I didn't want to go back into psychotherapy. It's far too much like parenting. So I was very, very lucky at that point in the late 1990s to discover the British Society for Ecological Medicine. And this was a bunch of doctors as disillusioned as I was with orthodox medicine, but unlike me, finding solutions, finding other ways to practice that are totally based on the biochemical sciences we learnt in medical school, but are applying them in a way I was never taught to applying them. So they're doing nutrition. They're looking at the good stuff that's missing from our bodies and why it's missing, how to put it back, both through diet and supplement and other means, and also looking at environmental toxins, the bad stuff that shouldn't be in our bodies. In other words, they are finding what it is that's causing our current epidemics of serious chronic degenerative disease, and they're both preventing and successfully treating those. So I was wildly excited. I mean, this was like a decade and a half after I had qualified before I found the doctors who were doing the kind of medicine I thought I'd be learning when I went to medical school in my late teens. So I was very lucky that when I found them, they were just starting a 2-year course, postgrad course for doctors, teaching what we now call ecological medicine. In the States, they call it clinical ecology. And, the long name is nutritional and environmental medicine, which I would summarize as the nutritional half is putting the missing good stuff back in, and the environmental half is taking the bad stuff that's been in our air and water and soil and food since the Industrial Revolution out again. But those two halves are as one, because one of the main ways you get the bad stuff out is by putting the good stuff in. And one of the factors that's pushing the good stuff out, it's not just poor diet, is the pollution that our poor old livers are trying to detox and using up a huge amount of nutrients in the process. So it's called ecological medicine for two reasons. And one is it sees the whole body as one joined up ecosystem. Okay, so you might go to your GP and say, I've got a rash on my skin and my joints are hurting. I've got arthritis and I can't breathe properly. I'm wheezing. My lungs are hurting. You will simply be referred, respectively, to a dermatologist, a rheumatologist, and a respiratory physician, a chest doctor, to deal with the lungs. Those three people won't talk to each other. And if you put them in a room together, and I'd love to sometimes bang their heads together and say, all this is happening in one person's body.
Yeah.
What are the connections? But they won't talk to each other. They have no language to do that. In ecological medicine, what we would say is, well, what is it in this person's life, in their history, in their lifestyle, in their gut, which is manifesting as pathology in the joints, in the skin, and in the lungs? And of course, in traditional Chinese medicine, which has been going for thousands of years, they would say, the gut, the skin, and the lungs are all profoundly connected. We know that what happens in the gut will affect all those other organs. So we will get to the root of the problem. And it isn't easy. It requires a lot of work from the patient, eating foods they've never eaten before, giving up foods perhaps they've been hooked on for decades. But it works. But ecological medicine is ecological in another sense, a deeper sense as well, which is that it sees the human person, the human body, in the wider context of planet Earth. We are part of the wider ecosystem of Mother Earth, and we can never not be. We eat the food that's grown in the soil. We drink the water, we breathe the air. So what goes around comes around. And all the waste and rubbish and industrial crap that we're throwing away, of course, there is no such place as away, it's all coming back to bite us. The plastics, the petrochemicals, the pesticides, the heavy metals. You can't poison the planet without poisoning the people, and we're doing both. But we can stop doing both. I really believe we can heal ourselves and the planet if we learn. If we educate ourselves, if we acquire the knowledge of what pollution we're putting into the soil, therefore the food, the water and the air, and precisely how we can stop doing it, stop damaging ourselves and the planet. And in our individual lives, there are hugely different consumer choices we can make, different things we can buy and stop buying so that we're not polluting ourselves and the planet. And of course, there are detox methods, which I describe in my first book, of how we can take these toxic substances out of our bodies, find out what's there, get rid of it, and eat in a different way so that we don't retox ourselves, because it's no good just detoxing and then retoxing. And unless you know what's coming from where, you are retoxing simply by living in our poisoned world.
Yeah, this is the sad thing, isn't it? We would be interested to know, what are the most common health issues that you're seeing in your patients nowadays?
I am seeing a huge increase in autoimmune diseases, right, and neurodegenerative diseases. Now, some of those are both. So, for example, multiple sclerosis, clearly it's neurodegenerative, but it's also autoimmune in that the body's immune system is turning against itself in this instance against the myelin sheath, the fatty sheath that coats the nerves, acts as an insulator so that messages can successfully travel between brain and body, muscles, skin, and back again. Now, what they should be doing is asking, well, why would the immune system start destroying the myelin sheath in MS? Or in rheumatoid arthritis, why would it start attacking the synovial membrane of the joints? And they're not asking that question. They're just zapping the immune system with steroids or other immune suppressant drugs to make it stop. But actually, we're beginning to have some answers about why the immune system should turn against our own tissue. Now, the immune system is very smart. It's kept us alive. It's kept all animals alive for millions of years. Billions. So why would it suddenly? It doesn't make sense. Now, the answer is that the way the immune system works is it attacks alien tissue. So a bacterium or a virus with a protein coat that it recognizes as being non-self, right? Alien tissue. But it looks at the protein structure and it says, oh, that doesn't fit. That's not me. That's not my body. That's alien. I shall attack it. However, if our bodies have been poisoned with heavy metals, particularly heavy metals like mercury, cadmium, lead, aluminium, which we've been digging up these metals for thousands of years, those metals distort protein structure. They do their damage by making our own proteins take up weird shapes. And you see this with mercury and aluminium poisoning in the brain, leading directly to Alzheimer's disease because it's distorting the structure of the it's creating neurofibrillary tangles by distorting protein structure in the brain. You see it in MS, in Hashimoto's, which is autoimmune thyroiditis, in rheumatoid arthritis, and so on. If you can get the heavy metals out of that person's system, you may not be able to save the protein molecules that are already damaged, but you can stop further damage accruing.
Wow.
And this is one of the reasons we measure heavy metals, we detox them, and we teach people how to keep them out of their systems. First of all, by eating organic, by not having mercury fillings in their teeth. Silver amalgam fillings are mercury. Many other ways to avoid these heavy metals and to get rid of them. High dose vitamin C done in a controlled way, increasing by 1 gram a day or 0.5 gram a day till you know your maximum bowel tolerance. Okay, you stop at the level below the level at which you get diarrhea.
What vitamin C would you recommend for people?
Magnesium ascorbate powder.
Okay.
Or potassium ascorbate powder, because pure ascorbic acid is a form of vitamin C that's too rough on the stomach.
Interesting.
And in chapter 7 of my first book, Staying Alive in Toxic Times, I do describe this method that we all learnt from Dr. Sarah Myhill, where you go up by 0.5 gram a day. Some people can get up to 6 grams a day, some people to 20 or 30, but at some point it'll give you the runs.
Okay.
Right? So when that happens, you go back to the previous day's dose and you know that that's your personal bowel tolerance level.
Okay.
As well as that, there are many other detox methods for getting heavy metals out. One of them is saunas, done in a very particular way, right? Not Turkish bath, not steam, dry sauna. And you only sweat for 5 or 10 minutes. That's all you need. After that, you start losing the good minerals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's a really big thing at the moment, going for saunas,
Yes.
and people are doing it for an hour.
They're staying in there way too long.
So do you think that's too long?
I think you need little and often. If I'm detoxing someone from serious heavy metal toxicity or pesticide poisoning, I will say 5 or 10 minutes from the moment you start to sweat.
Okay.
Right, now, some of the sickest people don't sweat for the first half hour. And because they're not natural sweaters, that's why they've become so toxic with these heavy metals. They don't excrete it by the normal method of sweating. But what I've learned is that even those people eventually start to sweat sooner if they keep doing the saunas. So ideally, not everyone can do this, but ideally 3 times a week, but only 5 or 10 minutes of sweating. And crucially, you take a clean towel in there and you wipe off the sweat as soon as it appears, because otherwise the body will just reabsorb it again.
That's such a good point.
No, I think this is
You've
so
got to think
interesting.
of it from an evolutionary perspective. We didn't evolve to sweat for detox. We sweated to cool ourselves down. And the minute that liquid is on the skin, the body just reabsorbs it again. But if you're getting rid of pesticides, plasticizers, chemicals, and heavy metals or whatever, you don't want to reabsorb them. So the minute you break a sweat, you wipe it off, you keep wiping it off for 10 minutes, drop that towel in the dirty washing.
Okay.
It is now contaminated. Drop it in the laundry and then go and have a shower. That's the way to do the saunas. Again, credit to Dr. Sarah Myhill, who taught us all this way of doing saunas. Organic vegetable juice helps detox everything.
Okay.
Sprouting organic salad on your window ledge, just pouring it, filtered water to water it, eating those sprouts, that helps you detox. The high-dose vitamin C I've mentioned. Colonic hydrotherapy for some people. I mean, you have to be over 18 and comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that can be a tremendous detox because the liver gets its blood supply largely from the colon.
Okay.
So if the colon, to put it politely, is full of old rubbish, then the blood supply to the liver is full of toxins, and the liver has a hard enough time detoxing environmental toxins. You want to take the burden off it.
So would you recommend enema, like at-home enemas, or just
if you're
in
happy
clinics?
doing them? But I
Okay.
think professional colonic hydrotherapy is better.
Okay.
I feel safer with that.
And would you recommend with coffee? Say if someone was
No,
not with
coffee
coffee
enemas, unless you're dealing with cancer and you've got an experienced practitioner,
Okay.
Interesting.
the coffee is absorbed massively from the colon. People can get palpitations, they can get caffeine overdose. I don't think it's needed for most people. There are
Interesting, okay.
specialist circumstances, yes. But if you get palpitations from drinking coffee, you will get them much
Definitely.
worse
Yeah, so that would be
from
no-go
putting it
for
in
me.
the other end. And also, luckily, we have learned there are specific substances that help detox specific toxins. So for aluminium, silica. Silica will take it out of the body. Now, there are some spring waters that are high in natural silica, and there's a herb, horsetail, which absorbs silica naturally from the soil. And there are silica supplements. I use Silicon Organique from LLRG5. It's an Irish company, but it's French company based in Ireland. And we can use silica to take the aluminium out, as well as the vitamin C and the veg juicing and the saunas and everything else.
Is there a certain brand that you would recommend a vitamin C for people?
Well, I use BioCare's vitamin C powder,
Okay.
which is magnesium ascorbate.
Yeah.
There are even purer brands like Metabolics and Viridian are both very, very good, ethical and pure and uncontaminated. You tend to use what you're familiar with and what you know works. And
What about lipospheric?
Sorry?
What are your thoughts on lipospheric vitamin
You
C?
mean liposomal?
Liposomal, sorry, yeah.
I don't go with liposomal vitamin C, and I'll tell you why. I know it's all the rage, but
I think because we've been taking it for a long time because we thought that was the best bioavailable one to take.
well,
So it'd be
the
interesting to hear.
advantage that it has is because they've enclosed it in a bubble of fat, essentially, it will last longer.
Right.
It's like a way of making it slow release. But the natural way that we would have got vitamin C as hunter-gatherers is not slow release. It's not a fat-soluble vitamin like vitamins A and D and E. It's a water-soluble vitamin. And so I think in the natural way, we'd have it little and offal, especially women. We'd have been grazing, right? Gathering. The guys were off hunting and
lovely.
us women were gathering. Little plants full of vitamin C, antioxidants, all the minerals, all the anti-cancer minerals. So, for example, in broccoli sprouts, 50 times more per weight of plant of the sulforaphanes and the DIM, diindolyl methane, which prevent breast cancer, 50 times more concentrated in the tiny broccoli sprout you can grow on your window ledge, or our ancestors would have found in the wild, than in the mature broccoli. Mature broccoli is still good, but it's not as powerful. So we would have been walking around getting our vitamin C and everything else from tiny plants, little and often.
Okay.
And when I'm detoxing people with vitamin C, I would say, and this is why I'd use powder rather than capsules.
Okay.
First of all, you need more than you can swallow with capsules. There's only so many capsule shells that the body can cope with, the gut can cope with. So you put your day supply of vitamin C powder in a big bottle of filtered water, a glass bottle, and as you go through your day, you carry it around with you and you sip it. So you're having it little and often. And I think that's a more natural way than the liposomal to make sure that you don't run out.
Okay.
Because vitamin C and all the B vitamins, almost all the B vitamins, are water soluble. Now, that means after a few hours, you need some more. You need a regular top up because you pee it out.
Okay.
But the fact that you keep peeing it out means you cannot overdose. with the B vitamins that we need for energy, for carbohydrate metabolism, for protection of the heart, to keep the homocysteine level down and prevent heart attacks, which no GP has even heard of. We need the B vitamins and vitamin C, but we need them on a regular basis.
And that's because our bodies don't store them.
We don't store them. We pee them out.
Yeah.
Because nature anticipated we would have a daily supply.
Okay, of course.
Right? And what is fascinating is that it's fruit and veg and grains and pulses and little plants which give us those water-soluble vitamins, and nuts and seeds, which we would have been having every day from the gathering half of hunter-gathering. What the hunting half gives you, meat and fish, is the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and E, and we can store them. We can store them in our fatty tissue, which is why, although I think many people do need to eat animal food, nobody needs it every day, right?
Okay.
Because we can store the vitamins that it gives us in our fat.
That's so
Vitamin D
interesting.
we need primarily from sunshine.
Yes.
But again, we can store it.
Okay.
So, if you're lucky enough to be sunbathing with bare arms and bare legs and have really good weather and clear blue skies from May to September, you may get enough vitamin D to see you through the winter because
But
we
not
can
in this
store
country,
it.
though.
Not in the UK. No, sadly,
No.
not in the UK.
So I've heard really conflicting things about vitamin D supplementation. So you would recommend that someone should supplement?
Well, what I would recommend ideally is that you get your blood level of vitamin D tested.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
you
it's
know what your
individual.
starting point is. Well, we all need it, but what is individual is how we metabolize it, how we use it, in the same way that we're all genetically different in terms of our liver detox enzymes, right? Some people can actually break down organophosphate pesticides, but about a third of us cannot.
Okay.
So all these post-industrial toxins are much more lethal to some of us than to others. And you can do genetic testing. I mean, I use a wonderful firm called LifeCode GX.
Okay.
And they will tell you, you can't detox this, you can detox that. You've got a metabolic glitch here, so you're always going to need far more of, let's say, vitamin B12 than your next door neighbour.
Oh, wow.
So the kind of lifestyle changes that people like you and I are always advocating are good for everybody, but vital for some people.
Okay.
They're the difference between life and death for people who have these genetic vulnerabilities of poor detox, to whom it would have made no difference at all before the Industrial Revolution.
And are there signs in that? Would you see this in, say, people with autoimmune disorders? Are there kind of signs that people should look out for that they are?
Well, I think getting ill,
Okay, yeah, of course.
But of course, preventive testing is better. But the same genetic variation that affects our detox capacities also affects our vitamin D metabolism. So going back to that, this is why, even though we all need it, some of us can take, let's say, 4,000 international units of vitamin D every day through the winter, and that will be fine. Other people need as much as 10,000. And I would want genetic testing to find out, okay? So one of the things that vitamin D does, right, the only thing that your GP knows it does is to protect your bones and prevent rickets. Therefore, the normal range, the NHS, God bless, their normal range is based on the level you need to not get rickets. But actually, you also need vitamin D for your brain to function properly, to make all your hormones, steroids, estrogen, testosterone, all of those. And you need it for the immune system, not only to fight off bad bugs, but to modulate itself and calm itself down. So I don't know if you remember, but during COVID, a lot of the people in intensive care died of what was called a cytokine storm. So the immune system starts off fighting the bug and then it can't turn off the fight. It can't stop the war and it carries on very destructively. Now, vitamin D at a good level utterly prevents that. And the level at which it prevents it is higher than what your NHS test results will tell you, right? So you can get a result from your GP saying it's normal or it's borderline. No, ask for the numbers, right? And ask for the units. They say it should be I would say it should be at least between 75 and 200 nanomoles per litre. That's NMOL/L. Nanomoles per litre. Now, if they're using different units like milligrams per decilitre, it's lower. It's something like 50 to 80. But If it's between 75 and 200 nanomoles per litre, you will be in a strong position to resist all the winter viruses, as well as to keep your bones strong into old age. But now, I'm afraid GPs are telling people so long as it's over 25, it's all right. Now, it isn't. If it's over 25, you won't get rickets, your bones won't actually disintegrate. But if it's not over 75, your brain and your immune function and your hormone production will not be optimal.
Wow.
If you think about it, we evolved, and again, this is something we've learned from Dr. Sarah Myhill, we evolved running naked under the African sun.
Yeah.
And 1 hour of serious sunshine will make 10,000 IU of vitamin D in our skin.
Yeah.
And yet we're told that's far too high a dose to take. Now, ideally, we should get it from sunshine, not from a pill.
Yeah.
Of course, but if we live in these godforsaken northern climes...
I also heard something interesting about sunglasses the other day, and it was saying that one of the reasons we burn is because if we're wearing sunglasses on our eyes, the receptors that obviously have the kind of sort the chemicals out in our body will basically mean that we're more likely to burn because our eyes aren't aware.
The brain doesn't know it's sun. I think
Yeah.
that's absolutely right.
So we shouldn't wear sunglasses, really.
Well, we shouldn't, and I don't. But there's another reason why we shouldn't, which is I don't wear sunglasses, but I wear glasses. I'll take them off on a day like today where there's some blue sky and sunshine so the ultraviolet can get to my eyes, but crucially so it can get to the pineal gland, right? So the pineal gland in the brain tells us whether it's day or night. Okay. And when we see blue sky and sunshine, it says wake up, wakes up the brain and stops the production of melatonin, which is for going to sleep. Now, the pineal needs it to be dark to make melatonin. So what we need to do is get our kids to switch off their screens at 6 o'clock in the evening, because for those 3 or 4 hours before bedtime, your body needs some darkness to make melatonin. So, you need the red-orange light that would, in our evolutionary history, have been firelight. It would have been firelight.
Of course, Not even
Orangey
sunset.
red and infrared and red light. That's what you need in the evening, not the bright white and blue light from the screen or conventional lighting. If you do that, you can wind down and your pineal gland knows it's bedtime and knows it's dark and will make melatonin, which not only helps you sleep, it's anti-cancer, profoundly anti-cancer, antioxidant nutrient is melatonin, and you can only make it in the dark. And it tells the body when puberty is supposed to happen. Okay, so it prevents precocious puberty in girls.
Wow.
Now, we are seeing an epidemic of precocious puberty in girls. You read Jane Austen, these girls were playing with dolls and being children until they were 15 or 16.
Yeah.
That's when their period started.
Yeah.
Now, 9, 10, 11.
I know, it's
Now, this is
really
scary.
because I think that this has changed in our
generation.
Yes, it has.
because I was 15
Yes.
when I started my period.
That's
and I
right.
know now that the younger generations, and it's kind of a scary thought. We both raising girls, we've got 4 girls between us. And I think that's,
Yeah, and it's scary both socially and biologically, because the other thing is it makes you smaller. Once you go through puberty, your bones fuse, so you can't carry on growing. But more importantly, this is messing with our hormones. So melatonin is a hormone we make if we have enough dark, and also if the pineal is not interfered with by what poisons it. And what poisons it is fluoride.
So we were going to come on to fluoride at one point, so go for it.
Well, one of the many forms of damage that fluoride does is it basically stops the pineal gland working at all. So you won't produce your anti-cancer melatonin, your help me get to sleep melatonin, and your stop precocious puberty melatonin.
Wow.
And where there is fluoride added to tap water, we're seeing this. We're seeing bone damage. Paradoxically, we're seeing tooth damage. Of course, it's meant to prevent caries in teeth. But guess what? There's another way of preventing caries in teeth. Brush your teeth and stop eating sugar, right? And in fact, the rate of cavities in children's teeth has gone down tremendously since the 60s in all countries, those that have fluoride in the water and those that don't have fluoride in the water.
Okay.
Right? So it's a lie to say it's preventing cavities.
Wow.
It isn't. We have to ask ourselves why they're putting this toxic stuff in drinking water. All over the United States, nowhere in Europe, in the Republic of Ireland and Birmingham since 1964. And it is a waste product, this fluoride. It's a waste product of the phosphate fertilizer industry, who are laughing all the way to the bank, because instead of having to properly dispose of their hazardous waste or pay someone to do so, they are being paid by water authorities, local authorities, who are taking it away. When it leaves the premises, it's legally classified as hazardous waste. When it's added to your tap water, it's classified as water treatment agent. Not as a medication, interestingly, because then it would have to go through testing and it would fail. It is linked with lowered IQ in children if they're exposed to it in the womb or as toddlers. And there are so many studies. I couldn't believe this because I knew it from my own clinical experience, right? Kids from Birmingham and the Republic of Ireland coming to see me with really weird, undiagnosed abnormalities of brain development and bone development. And I would do a simple urine test and find their fluoride level sky high.
Oh, wow.
And their iodine level rock bottom. Because part of the way fluoride does its damage, ditto bromine and chlorine, which we can come on to later if we have time, is by pushing out iodine. Right? Iodine is crucial for the breast to prevent breast cancer, ditto the prostate, almost certainly the ovary as well, and the lining of the womb. And it's crucial for the thyroid gland, right? So fluoride is pushing that out. And I think the pineal needs iodine as well. So fluoride is lowering IQ partly by damaging the thyroid, which is crucial for normal brain development. And yet it's added to our water supply. So these kids that I've seen from Birmingham and the West Midlands and from the Republic of Ireland, when you get the parents to fit a water filter, so they're no longer drinking fluoride, and you give them iodine to get the fluoride out and help restore thyroid function and brain function. And of course, you correct the diet, you take them off the junk food, you make sure they've got loads of all the good minerals, vitamin C, essential fatty acids, both omega-3 and the good omega-6. They get a lot better. Particularly the brain function improves. And there is a case history in chapter 3 of the new book of a child from Birmingham in which we did this. We were able to improve brain function. He was 9 and he suddenly became able to read and write and do arithmetic and speak at a normal pace, but we couldn't undo the bone damage because the architecture of bone is distorted by fluoride, and that appears to be permanent. So when somebody's telling you it's good for children's teeth, you have to ask yourself, follow the money, what's their incentive? And does fluoride actually have a role in the human body? It doesn't. It's not a nutrient. There is no metabolic pathway, no biochemical pathway that requires fluoride. We need iodine, not fluoride. Crazy. So filter your water, eat organic, and use natural herbal toothpaste that does not contain fluoride. And be very careful. Take your kids to the dentist, but say, I don't want any mercury amalgam fillings and I don't want fluoride drops. Okay. Because the dentists are putting fluoride drops in people's teeth, in children's mouth, without telling, without asking.
Wow.
And it's very interesting how things change, because 15 years ago, your average dentist would tell you that mercury in the fillings was totally harmless and didn't leak out. Now they know that's not true.
Yeah.
However, they still believe that fluoride is good for you and harmless. So we have to keep on spreading the word. I mean, I found so many research papers going back 90 years showing the damage that fluoride does to children's brains. You know, and bone and kidney and thyroid and ovaries, but primarily to children's brains. The evidence is there and it's in the public domain. It's published in proper peer-reviewed journals, but it doesn't filter down. So the reason I wrote my second book was to take the information that's hidden in those kind of scientific journals, translate it into ordinary English, demystify the science so that people know the evidence is there. We don't need any more research.
Yeah.
Fluoride is lethal.
Just a quick break to talk to you about Happy Mammoth. At Raise, our goal is to help women and mothers to live their best lives, and that's exactly what Happy Mammoth want you to do too.
They are dedicated to helping women take control of their well-being at every stage of their life. Hormones are essential for our overall health and happiness, as they impact everything from our energy levels, sleep, to our mood and our focus. And when they're out of balance, well, life can feel pretty out of balance too. Which is why we're excited to share Happy Mammoth's Hormone Harmony with you.
Hormone Harmony isn't just for women going through menopause, it's for anyone experiencing the effects of hormonal changes. We both take Hormone Harmony as part of our daily supplement go-tos and are so impressed with the ingredients and benefits we feel from taking it. They're packed with adaptogens, which are really powerful herbal extracts that help your body manage stress, and it's designed to naturally restore balance and help you feel like yourself again.
You may have actually seen Hormone Harmony on social media already because women cannot stop raving about how it has transformed their lives. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds.
So whether you're navigating life's transitions into menopause or just looking for hormonal balance, check out Hormone Harmony from Happy Mammoth, because life's too short to let your hormones hold you back.
For a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use the code RAISE at checkout. And do they put fluoride in? It's not in all of our tap water, right? It's only, and I know you mentioned Birmingham and the Midlands.
Birmingham and the
West
Midlands,
higher up.
The Republic of Ireland, and now in Cheshire, parts of Cheshire, there's been a big fight. They wanted to put it in the northeast of England, the Tyne and Wear area.
And is this because they think children there have more cavity? Like, how does that make sense?
They're saying it's particularly good for poverty-stricken areas where there aren't any dentists, right? The solution to the lack of NHS dentists is not to poison the children. It's to train up more dentists, yeah? But the thing is, what happened was it was only a very few areas of Britain. And then Boris Johnson's government passed a health and social care bill, of which I think clauses 147 and 148 specify that they want to add fluoride to the drinking water supply in the whole of Britain. The whole of Britain. And thank goodness there's a lot of ineptitude and incompetence, so they haven't managed it yet. But there are fights. There is a fight going on still in the northeast, and Southampton, I think there's been a fight. And definitely in chapter 3 of my new book, I give the links to the campaigns in Britain that started in the West Midlands for obvious reasons that are trying to prevent fluoridation of our remaining water supplies.
Okay.
So it's a necessary political campaign, but for yourself, for your family, at least get a water filter.
Okay. Are there any specific water filters that you would recommend?
This is a $64,000 question. Actually, in my first book, Staying Alive in Toxic Times, I do recommend a couple of particular brands. And I remember I do so on page 275 because it's the question I'm asked most often. And here's why it's difficult to answer. It's difficult to answer because just like supplement companies, water filter companies can get taken over by the big bad guys. They can change. So as of this moment, here are my two main criteria for choosing who you buy your water filter from. First, has the company been making water filters for a long time, 20 years? They haven't just jumped on the bandwagon.
Okay.
And secondly, when you email them and you say, precisely which toxins does this remove from my water supply and how does it do it? You need a written answer with references.
Okay.
If you get that, then the company knows what it's doing.
Okay.
Right? And that is the way to go because there are always new ones. There are old ones. Some are good, some are bad. But anything makes a difference.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, ideally, you want a plumbed-in whole house water filter because you don't just want to be drinking safe water. You want to be cooking in safe water, rinsing your veg in safe water.
And showering.
Bathing and showering in safe water because whatever you're bathing and showering in is going in through your skin and you're inhaling it.
Yeah,
so
true.
It's really important. If you can afford a whole house plumbed-in water filter, you'll never have to buy bottled water again. And of course, you should never, ever buy water in plastic because it may have been pure when it left the Highlands Spring, but it's full of microplastics from the bottle.
Yeah.
Unless it's been stolen cold from the moment of bottling, which is unlikely. So if you can't afford a whole house plumbed-in water filter or you're a student in rented accommodation, at least get a Brita countertop. It's a plastic jug, which is not ideal, but you can still taste the difference. You know, so when my kids were at university, that's what they did.
You can smell the difference.
You can smell the difference. You can taste the difference. And once you're drinking water without chlorine in it, you go to your friend's house and they give you a glass of water or a cup of tea and it's straight from the tap. You can smell the chlorine.
So my kids are always like, no thanks when they say
exactly. And it's a real thing trying to get kids to drink water and not fruit juice and junk drinks which are full of sugar and rubbish. But if you filter the water, they'll drink it.
Yeah.
Because it tastes better.
Good point. Yeah.
I feel like there is so many different areas and topics that we could talk with you about. But I'm just going to circle back to, you talk about organic food a lot. And we feel like organic food shouldn't be called organic. You know, the inorganic food should have a label with all of the chemicals that they have on.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about the impact that these pesticides are having on us and our health?
Okay, so organic food is not some kind of special weird hippie food. It's ordinary food, like our great-grandparents ate. It's simply food that's been grown naturally in the earth, not been sprayed with pesticides, not been filled with synthetic fertilizers, and in the case of animal food, not been fed antibiotics, not been given hormones or growth promoters, and has been fed on organic plant food. And the accusation that's often levelled at those of us who advocate organic food is, oh, it's just for the well-off middle classes. It shouldn't be, and this is in the government's hands, because if they started subsidising the organic farms, then organic food would be cheaper, right? But what the government are doing is subsidising big ag, right? The agri-chemical companies that have taken over large swathes of our previously green and pleasant land and turned it into dead monocrops where only one thing grows. And of course, where only one thing grows, the pest that eats that crop will say, whoa, it's Christmas, and it will bring all its friends and relatives to gobble up the crop. Hence, you've got to spray pesticides. They stop working, just like with antibiotic resistance. The bugs become immune. So then they spray another chemical and then another. And then the soil erodes, it becomes derelict, it becomes infertile, so they add a load of synthetic fertilizers, which creates tremendous pollution in the rivers and the seas downstream, and you've got dead land. If instead of all that, the government subsidised the organic farmers who are regenerating the soil and who are fertilising it with animal poo instead of synthetic chemicals, and who are mixing the crops and rotating the crops and being gentle with the earth and not trying to absolutely maximise the output, although in the end, the yield of organic farms is as good or better than that of chemical farms. Right? And if they really crack down on the junk food industry so that, an organic broccoli was cheaper than a bag of crisps or a donut.
I think this is what's really hard, isn't it, for people today?
It's political, However, on the individual level, I would say eating organic is your health insurance. And it's not as expensive as private health insurance.
I like that.
We just can't afford not to. Because if you're not eating organic, you are eating pesticides. Now, let me tell you the origin of the pesticides, nerve gases. The origin of the synthetic fertilizers, explosives. Right, these substances have their origins in war. Now, in 1945, when the Second World War ended, the manufacturers of the nerve gases could have said, right, no call for this anymore. We're going to go and, study ballet. But they didn't. They repurposed them. And because they were developed as nerve gases, their primary effect is still on the nervous system of mammals like us, right? That's why they're so massively implicated in Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, motor neuron disease, as well as cancer. And I knew this through my clinical practice and the experience of all my colleagues. But in researching the book, I found again, there are thousands of published papers showing the links, for example, between pesticide intake and Parkinson's disease. Also pesticides and kidney disease, heavy metals and kidney disease. It's all in there in the literature, so we know this. But I have had people sit in my consulting room and say to me, oh, look, I can't afford all this eating organic business. Oh, by the way, can we reschedule the next consultation because I'll be in Barbados? And my jaw drops. And I think, well, I'd like to be able to afford to get my vitamin D in Barbados as well.
Yeah.
How lovely. And by the way, if you do get your vitamin D from sunshine, you know how it makes sunshine in the skin? By turning the cholesterol under your skin into vitamin D. So if you've got no cholesterol because you're on statin drugs, you can't make vitamin D. We make it from cholesterol, but we need the sunshine. Okay, so almost everyone can afford some organic food. And in London and Manchester and many other cities, there are charities making fresh, local, organic produce available to the poorest people.
Wow.
Right? I mean, of course, poverty is the problem in itself. Nobody should need a food bank. And when you go to a food bank, it's mostly tins and packets. Everybody should have access to organic, fresh produce. And ideally, everyone should have access to a little bit of land. Not everyone has a garden, but I tell you what, everyone has a window ledge.
Yes.
If you haven't got an actual physical window ledge, you've got a window and you put a table next to the window and you don't even need soil. You just need to soak a few seeds and put them in a sprouter and you grow your baby lettuce, your baby broccoli, your microgreens, and that's absolutely full of nutrients. And if you're detoxing a heavy metal, you add a couple of drops of liquid zinc. So BioCare do one called Nutrisorb Zinc, I think, to the water with which you water the seeds. And then the plant will absorb that mineral, put it in the natural mineral form for you, and you will absorb it. So everyone can do that on their windowsill.
Okay. I think we would like to touch a little bit more on heavy metals, if that's okay, because obviously they're becoming an increasing concern. We've talked a little about how they're ending up in our bodies. But what dangers do you think they really pose and what can we do to protect ourselves?
Okay, firstly, the way to protect yourself against the bad metals is to make sure your body is full up with the good ones.
Okay.
Right? So the minerals like zinc, magnesium, right? Zinc and magnesium are metals and they're absolutely essential for the body. Calcium, although we need more magnesium and less calcium on the whole. So zinc, selenium. I don't think it counts as a metal, but it's a very good mineral that keeps the others out. Iodine, again, not a metal, but it keeps out the toxic halogens like fluoride, chlorine, and bromine. Bromine, by the way, is in the flame retardants with which synthetic soft furnishings have to be impregnated by law. So your new mattress, sofa, curtains, carpet, they're outgassing bromine. If they're old, they've stopped. But if you're getting new, get organic, especially with mattresses. And anyway, get them in the spring when you can have the windows open and let those toxins go out the window. But iodine protects you against those. Selenium, magnesium, zinc, and tiny amounts of chromium-3 and manganese. Again, you can get these from any decent supplements company, combined with vitamin C that allows you to absorb them. That will protect you a lot from heavy metals.
So should we be supplementing with those things?
I think we should.
Okay.
And if we're vegan, we definitely should.
Okay. And are there any kind of multivitamins so that people don't have to go out and purchase a lot of...
No, multivits are a stopgap.
Okay.
Actually. And a lot of the minerals are incompatible with each other. So, for example, zinc and copper, you can't absorb both together because they compete. Calcium and magnesium, you can't because they compete. Iron will stop you absorbing zinc. So actually, it's better to take them in liquid form and spread out and with some vitamin C.
Okay.
It's harder work, but I do describe in my first book in some detail.
Amazing.
In chapter 1 and chapter 6, how to do that. You need to know where you're going to risk getting these heavy metals from. Nickel is everywhere, and there are numerous sources. There are actually too many to list in this podcast, but if you look in chapter 7 of my first book, and also in chapter 2 of my new book, I do talk about where you might find nickel in your environment and how to avoid it. But if you have diabetes, you've got to be very careful about it. Because although diabetes is primarily a disease of eating too much sugar, sugar metabolism is also messed with by nickel. Partly we think it pushes out chromium-3, which along with zinc is essential for normal sugar metabolism. Magnesium is as well. But stainless steel is 14% nickel. Most people don't know this. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
I know. Stainless steel is 14% nickel. Now, we know not to use aluminium saucepans. Stainless steel is probably a problem if you're diabetic. However, it's not a problem with everything you cook. If you're boiling an egg or boiling some rice, it's not an issue. But if you put anything acid into a metal saucepan, it will leach out the metal.
So what do you cook?
So I would use either glass or old-fashioned cast iron or Le Creuset.
Okay.
And I would use stainless steel for something like boiling rice or boiling an egg.
What about for a water bottle? Would you have a stainless steel? I know you
it's
have
a second choice
one.
to glass.
Okay.
But if you just have water in it, you're not going to leach the nickel or the metal out into water. It's if someone puts fruit juice in it. They are going to
interesting.
leach out metal. Obviously, I don't think we should be drinking fruit juice anyway.
No.
Yeah.
You eat fruit, but you don't juice it because you get too much of a sugar hit. Okay, aluminium. It's in underarm deodorant and it goes in through the skin, and the armpit is very near the breast. And we do find tumours in the outer upper quadrant of the breast with aluminium in them. You don't find aluminium in the normal breast tissue next door, you find it in the tumour. So Professor Philippa Darby of Reading University has done a lot of research on this, the link between aluminium and breast cancer, right? It's only one factor. Many, many other factors, like all the endocrine disrupting chemicals, the pesticides, possibly drinking too much milk, especially if it's not organic. There's loads of factors in breast cancer, but aluminium is one of them. And it's also been found at autopsy in the brains of people with Alzheimer's and the brains of people with autism. So we know that aluminium is implicated in any kind of brain disease.
How would you best test for this? I've done a hair sample analysis on
VHL, Viva Health Laboratories.
Okay. And would that be from a hair sample? Is that the best way?
You can.
Or...
It's very useful for toxic metals.
Okay.
In that if it's in your hair, it's in your body.
Okay.
But hair sampling is not so useful for the nutritional minerals. It does not give you a reliable answer to your status for zinc, magnesium, selenium, iodine, and so on.
My daughter's autistic, and I've done a hair mineral analysis test to check her metals, and it didn't show that any of them. But I was just wondering if there's maybe a different test.
There's
that
a
would
problem
be more...
with it, which is that if you are perhaps toxic with heavy metals because you're bad at excreting them, like we talked earlier, you're bad at excreting them in the sweat, you may not excrete them in the hair either. So I would get much more detailed blood tests done by VHL, which is Viva Health Laboratories.
I'll have a look, thank you.
And they will send the samples to America, either to Doctors Data or to the Great Plains Laboratory, where you can look at it in much more depth. So where are you going to get aluminium from? We've said underarm deodorants. Also, cooking anything acid in an aluminium saucepan, rhubarb or anything with tomato, lemon juice, fruit, plums. That's all good food, but not in an aluminium saucepan. Wrapping food in foil. Again, it depends what the food is. It's not always a problem. If you're having sandwiches, most of us are not these days, but if you're having sandwiches and you wrap them in aluminium foil, it's not an issue. But if you are, let's say you're cooking some fish in the oven, you squeeze lots of lemon juice on it, very nice, helps you digest it, but you then wrap it in aluminium foil, the acid in the lemon is going to leach the aluminium into the food. And you don't want to be eating that. So use ceramic dishes for cooking. Use ceramic dishes, for example, storing your cheese in the fridge. Don't wrap it in aluminium. So those are some ways to avoid aluminium. And now I'm going to be much more controversial. And if you decide to edit this bit out, so be it, right? I'm retired. The GMC can't strike me off now.
Is it about vaccines?
It's about vaccines,
yes.
Because a lot of vaccines, both adult flu vaccines and childhood vaccines, contain aluminium.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, until the early 2000s, they contained mercury, which is equally lethal and definitely, in my view, implicated in childhood autism, although air pollution and many other factors contribute as well. But autism wasn't in my pediatrics textbook in 1978.
Wow.
Get that. It wasn't there. The first case ever was described in the 1940s. It was rare as hen's teeth. We didn't touch it in medical school in the late 70s, early 80s. Didn't exist. My pediatrics professor said it wasn't a thing, right? It just wasn't a thing. Anyway, so we know that's an epidemic, so we have to look for causes, and there won't be one, there'll be a multitude of them. But until the early 2000s, the childhood vaccines had a lot of mercury in. Why? They said because it's antibacterial. It's in there as an antimicrobial. It is antimicrobial. It used to be used to treat syphilis. And in fact, that's one of the reasons that mercury fillings mess with your gut microbiome. You swallow it and it does damage the good along with the bad bacteria. But they said it was there as an antimicrobial, and they took it out, I think, in the early 2000s in the States, and it was all gone by about 2006, 2007 in the UK, apart from the old batches. They put aluminium in instead, almost immediately. But if you ask them why the aluminium's in there, they don't say it's an antimicrobial. It isn't. So they took a heavy metal that was in there for one reason out and put another heavy metal in for another reason. Why is the aluminium in there, they say? It's what they call an immune adjuvant. Right? An additional thing, immune adjuvant. In other words, it triggers the immune system to react more strongly to the particle of virus or bacterium that's in the injection wants the immune system to make antibodies against that thing they're injecting. And the aluminium in there does indeed trigger the immune system to overreact. It certainly does. And I have had so many kids, particularly the young girls, who've just had the so-called anti-cervical cancer vaccine, the Gardasil, or they call it the anti-HPV, human papillomavirus. I've seen so many girls sent home from school, desperately sick. They come to see me a year later. They're not better. They've got autoimmune conditions. Their aluminium level, when I measure it, is sky high. Give them huge doses of vitamin C and silica and all the other detox methods, the saunas, if they're up to it, which often they're too ill to do, to try and get it out. And actually, you know how to prevent cervical cancer? You don't have sex when you're 13 anyway, hopefully. But when you're older, use barrier contraception, don't smoke, and don't take the pill. And that I did learn in medical school. Cervical cancer is a preventable disease. Use condom. Have one partner rather than lots. Don't take the pill and don't smoke. And then that's the end of cervical cancer. And some of these girls in Scandinavian studies getting cervical cancer in their 20s. It used to be a disease of very old ladies, and they've had the jab. So the aluminium in there is doing what it says on the tin. It is overstimulating the immune system, but it's not targeted to only the bug you've just injected part of. It's all over. And I am very frightened about what aluminium is doing to our teenagers. So there you go. I've said it. I will watch how I cross the road, but look out for me because I'm very well and very happy. Okay, so that's aluminium. Mercury, we're much further on. They've stopped resisting the truth about the fact that A, it's a neurotoxin, and B, it does leach out of our fillings. Why? Why have they stopped trying to defend mercury? Because it's no longer a profitable industry. Follow the money, right? The need for mercury has almost disappeared. And so we are winning the fight to say it's neurotoxic. Stop putting it in our mouths. I mean, they've banned the old-fashioned blood pressure monitors, the sphygmomanometers, the blood pressure cuffs that had mercury in, because they've said it's dangerous. They've banned thermometers with mercury in, but they're still putting it in our teeth, right? So we know it's dangerous. But the aluminium industry is very huge and very profitable still. And that is why it is harder to get the word out about aluminium toxicity, because they're controlling the airwaves. And Professor Christopher Exley, who was for 35 years at the University of Kiel, world expert in the biochemistry, the inorganic biochemistry of aluminium, right, has been studying it his whole professional life, only found out relatively recently that it was in vaccines. This was after he'd found it in the brains of people with autism and Alzheimer's. And he researched how deadly it is, and he asked them to take it out of the vaccines. Guess what happened? He was sacked. Wow. His research, his very generous research funding was cut off. The university could have accepted it, could have been prestigious research for them. They cut it off. That's the influence of the aluminium industry and big pharma with a PH, the drug companies who make the vaccines. And thank you very much. They want to keep the aluminium in it. But, you know, our schools are filling up with special needs classrooms, running out of special needs teachers. There are residential facilities for these kids, which never used to exist. There are hospices for children, which didn't exist when I was in medical school. So something's going on.
So
and we have to look at everything.
For families wanting to protect their children, what should we be doing? Should we be doing heavy metal detoxes on them? You know, I know eating organic and there's a lot more holistic.
I think any child who's really having problems needs to see a practitioner and be worked with as an individual because they're all different. And on my website, I have a list of practitioners who are colleagues I respect who are doing the kind of work I did before I retired. Many of them will work with children. Interestingly, very few of those who will work with children are doctors. They're mostly nutritional therapists or herbalists or so on. They're fine. They know their stuff. But some of my colleagues who are doing brilliant work with children, you know, getting the autistic children making eye contact again, allowing themselves to be cuddled again, kids who'd stopped speaking, starting to speak again, they got struck off by the GMC and sacked because they were not paediatricians.
Wow.
Or because they were not psychiatrists or some such nonsense, right? So we are in a bit of a battle here, to put it mildly.
This year, let's say no to microplastics, no to toxins, and yes to clean, healthy hydration, because water matters more than you think.
We're made up of 60% water, so what we drink literally makes us who we are. Enter Win-Win Water, the game changer in pure toxin-free hydration.
Most tap water is full of chemicals, fluoride, metals, hormone disruptors, and even medications. And unfortunately, most bottled water is made from fossil fuel-based plastic, which can leach nanoplastics into the water we drink.
That's where Win-Win Water comes in. Not only are all their bottles 100% plant-based, made from sustainable sugarcane, but their water is locally sourced mineral water that is naturally high in electrolytes and minerals. No need to add anything in, it's just as nature intended, real, live water.
So we're huge advocates for the UK-based water company Win-Win Water. For us, it really is the starting point for health. If you're drinking the best quality water with no toxins, your body will thank you for it. And in this case, the environment will thank you too.
Win-Win Water are currently offering 10% off subscriptions with the code RAISE, so that you can get the best quality water delivered for you and your family directly to your door.
Visit winwinwater.co.uk to find out more.
But
I think in America, it might start to change, though, with RFK coming in, do you think?
I don't know.
Oh, really?
He is in the belly of a very frightening beast.
I'm just intrigued to hear your... Only because it's new news.
Yeah,
I was
it is
curious.
new news.
Yeah.
If he trusts Trump to really give him a free rein to improve the health of all ordinary Americans, let's see how long it will last. Because, Trump changes his mind on a whim.
Yeah,
And he could sack him at any minute.
Okay.
And RFK has already had to compromise himself in his beliefs to get through the Senate hearing. It was 52 to 48. Interestingly, exactly the same ratio as the Brexit vote, 52 to 48%. I think he's a man of integrity. He spent 40 years as a campaigner against water pollution.
Yeah.
And so what he learned was that big companies who are polluting the water and the air and the soil are not really regulated. Environmental agencies like the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, are actually staffed by the same people who run the industry. And it's the same with the regulators of the pharmaceutical industry and so on. The regulators are the industry. It's called the revolving door. So he learned that was the case in environmental protection, and then he learned that it was the same in pharmaceuticals. And I believe he has a son who became severely autistic after the MMR jab, right? So if you've seen it in your clinic, you can't deny it. Okay. I have seen it in my clinic again and again and again, mums and dads in floods of tears saying this was a normal child until a year, 18 months. This was a happy baby, making eye contact, cuddling, laughing, starting to say a few words. And after the second or third jab, this child is lying on the floor, bashing his head on the floor, bashing his head on the wall, screaming, going rigid, suddenly constipation, diarrhea, gut problems, fussy eating, not making social contact anymore. And this was a normal child. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to say to those mums, oh no, the vaccines are safe and effective?
Well, it's interesting because we actually just recently, or just on our previous podcast, just mentioned this, but because I didn't vaccinate my children. So my daughter, who is autistic, I know that it's not caused by the vaccine. Yeah. But obviously there'll be other
there are so many
of
other
play,
factors.
Yeah. But it's just, I'm so glad that I said that I don't have that regret or worry thinking that it was the vaccine.
How much worse she might be.
Exactly. And that's what, because she is fairly high functioning.
Right.
But
there is another factor in all this, another source of pollution that we haven't talked about, which I think is increasingly affecting the kids, and that is not chemical pollution, but electromagnetic pollution.
Yes.
Right? And this is a much harder one for people to accept. Partly, again, big tech is a huge and powerful industry. We're using big tech right now to record this conversation. But the fact of the matter is the radiation that's coming out of I haven't got a smartphone, but the radiation that's coming out of people's mobile phones is inimical to human biology.
Do you think it's really concerning?
It is not something we evolved with. It has been linked with brain tumours. Again, I'm afraid there are thousands of serious studies that have shown this, particularly from Scandinavia, where they started having mobile phones about a decade before we did in the UK. So they can look at long-term exposure. The younger you are, the more vulnerable you are. There is an electromagnetic spectrum, okay, that goes from nuclear radiation at one extreme, that's very short wavelength, high frequency, like X-rays, gamma rays, and so on. At the other end, you've got high frequency, long wavelength, which is what's coming out of your mobile phone, your Wi-Fi router, the cell phone towers, mobile phone masts that sprung up like mushrooms after rain in lockdown with exactly the same amount of consultation. Swiss study showed that people living nearer than 600 meters to one of those have a much higher rate of dementia than people living further away. We can't see it, we can't taste it. Most of us can't feel it, but there's a whole subgroup of
I genuinely
people.
feel like I can.
People who are electrosensitive absolutely can feel it, and it can be crippling. However, the good news is there are ways to use this technology safely. There are ways to protect ourselves from it. The simplest and most important is not to put the phone next to your head, not to have it touching your ear. So text rather than call. If you have to call, use speakerphone.
Okay.
Now, nobody reads the fine print in the insert that comes in the box with their phone or the online manual, which is increasingly replacing it. But if you read the fine print, it says, hold this more than a centimetre away from your head. They're saying that to cover themselves because the insurers won't cover them. And where there have been claims for brain tumours and in Italy an acoustic neuroma, which is a tumour of the nerve that enables us to hear, these companies have lost the cases and the people have won because they've been able to prove that it was the electromagnetic radiation from their phone that caused the brain tumour. Now, the manufacturers know this, they're very canny. So the antenna on the phone from which the radiation comes, it used to be up the top going into the brain, is now lower down. What are we seeing? Throat cancer in young men.
No.
Throat cancer used to be a disease of elderly men who drank a lot of spirits and smoked a lot of cigars. And we're seeing it in young men because the antenna of the phone is targeting the throat, not the brain. All this is documented and fully referenced in chapter 6 of the new book. And the hazards of nuclear radiation, which haven't gone away, are documented in chapter 5 of the new book. And it's essentially the same thing. What we evolved with for billions of years was the electromagnetic field of the earth. And you can be in touch with that again instantly by standing barefoot on the grass, or if you're lucky enough, on a beach. But once we come into our homes, we've got literally, according to Professor Deborah Davis, 1 trillion times that level of electromagnetic field surrounding us because of all our devices. Turn the Wi-Fi off. Do not have the Wi-Fi router near your child. Turn everything off at night. Hold the mobile phone away from your head. And you can get a meter to measure what's happening. If your neighbour's Wi-Fi is coming into your child's bedroom, you can shield. You can get shielding paint on the wall to stop it.
Oh,
and it doesn't bounce back at your neighbour's children. Because I didn't do this for years because I was worried about my next door neighbour's children. But it turns out it doesn't. Okay.
So what is the type of paint?
EMF blocking paint.
Okay.
In the back of chapter 6, there's a whole list of places where you can get that.
Okay.
But before you get any of this, or a Faraday bag to put around your phone, or something to protect your hands if you're texting a lot and you're electrosensitive and it makes your hands tingle. Yeah. You can get protection stuff for all of that, but first get a meter. And again, I list in chapter 6 of the new book companies who sell those meters because it may be better or worse than you suspect.
Okay.
So as with testing for heavy metals, test for the EMFs in your environment.
Okay.
And join the campaign to get Wi-Fi out of schools because it's making the kids worse with the ADHD and the autism and the fidgeting. They shouldn't be in that environment. I mean, as we know, they should be out in the fields running around.
Yes.
But if they are indoors, they don't need to be bombarded with all this electromagnetic radiation, right? The part of the electromagnetic spectrum that we need is the visible rainbow plus infrared at one end and ultraviolet at the other. And that's it.
Okay.
We are way beyond that into completely unnatural, dangerous, uncharted territory.
It's really interesting. Thank you. I think we might have to start wrapping up.
Yeah.
So we'll maybe do a couple of last questions.
We would love to know then, because obviously all of this can be quite overwhelming and scary to people. So what would be the first things that you would recommend that people do?
Okay, so 4 top tips.
Yeah.
3 of which we've talked about already, and
Yeah.
the 4th we haven't, but we should. First of all, eat organic.
Yeah.
Second, filter your water. 3, moderate your use of the mobile phone. Nobody is indispensable and has to be available 24/7, but when you do use it, use the protective measures and protective devices that I list at the end of chapter 6 of my new book. 4th, and we haven't talked about this, 90% of our time is spent indoors, and indoor pollution probably puts us at more risk than all the outdoor pollution, the air pollution, although that is a serious thing. That's not something you can do much about individually if you live on a main road. But inside your home, you can stop spraying the air fresheners. You can burn some nice essential oils like lavender or jasmine or rose. But if you have been spraying air fresheners, ask yourself why the air in your house needs freshening. Empty the bins, open the windows, and sort out your gut with a good holistic practitioner so the toilet doesn't smell. Okay? And also check out your mattress. Make sure if you get a new one, it's organic. Keep the windows open and be wary of, we've talked about what you're wrapping your food in, what you're not wrapping your food in. If you decorate, use organic paint. It's a bit more expensive, a bit more of a faff, but it can be done. Be careful of your soft furnishings. Don't have mothballs in your wardrobe. Essential oil of lavender works just as well. And Green Fibres, a lovely firm in Totnes, a lovely shop, they sell their moth spray, which is just neem oil and lavender.
Yeah.
And it's in a spray form. You throw that in your wardrobe, you spray it in your wardrobe, and you won't get moths. Because the conventional purple mothballs contain paradichlorobenzene, the commonest pesticide I have found when I took samples from sick people.
Wow.
So loads of little things that we don't think about that we're doing in our home that we can easily do differently. And the last thing I would say, because it can be very overwhelming learning all this stuff, don't try and make all the changes at once. You know, take your time, make changes 1 a week, and know that whatever you're doing is making a difference. And that even though it can be overwhelming to know all this stuff, once you know it, you can protect yourself.
Absolutely.
If we don't know it, we can't.
Yeah.
So true. Can we actually, something just came into my head, and I think that you speak so eloquently about this, but can we quickly touch on skincare products before we wrap it up? Because I feel like even with, you know, toxins within your home, I feel like we think a lot about what we eat, but not necessarily what we put on our skin.
Absolutely. We shouldn't put anything on our skin that we wouldn't eat or put on in our mouths. So coconut oil is a great moisturizer. That's edible. Shea butter is another one. I'm really glad you raised the issue about personal care products, because when I was researching this for chapter 7 of the new book, I started calling them personal scare products. Because the conventional ones from the chemist or the supermarket are full of petrochemicals. You know, it's basically like putting petrol on your skin. And the thing about petrochemicals, and this goes for, you know, the conventional moisturizers, deodorants, sunscreens, makeup, all the stuff we put on our skin, because they are petrochemicals, they are lipophilic. That means they dissolve in fat. They're attracted to fat. So they're going to go straight in through your skin, and then they're going to head for the fattiest organ of the body, which is, guess what? The brain, right? The brain and the nervous system. So with the moisturizers and the sunscreens and all these cosmetic products, there are safe herbal alternatives.
Do you wear sunscreen?
I don't.
Okay.
I do gradual exposure.
Okay.
But if I was in a situation where, you know, it was suddenly very hot and I was exposing a part of my body that hadn't been exposed, then I would use a safe one like Badger or Sweet Bee. And again, I list them in the book. And there's I've done a couple of Instagram posts mentioning a couple of products that people alerted me to that I didn't know about when I wrote the book. But the overall thing I would say about these products is go to the Soil Association's website. They have a whole section called Health and Beauty, and their pages are superb. And the reason it's important is you can't advertise a food as being organic if it's not, but there's no regulation of personal care products at all. So you can look at a shampoo on the shelf and it says organic. It may have only 1% organic ingredients.
Wow.
That is legal. So how do you know? You know if the Soil Association validate it, and it has their logo on it, or if Cosmos validate it. Cosmos is the pan-European organisation for validating personal care products. So it's like cosmetics, and it includes the Soil Association as a member organisation. Okay. So if it's got the Cosmos seal on it or the Soil Association one, it's fine. But most of the other things may not be. So for example, laundry powder, the Soil Association recommend Green Scents. It's one word, but scents as in perfume, so SCENTS. Green Scents laundry powder. It's soft, it's gentle, it's harmless. The Soil Association recommend it. There's also one that I found called Alavar, ALLAVARE, which is just bicarbonate of soda. That's all it is, sodium bicarbonate, which you can use for all the cleaning purposes in your home as well. You know, you look at all that stuff under the kitchen sink, get a magnifying glass. What do you see? A long list of toxic chemicals and a skull and crossbones sign, which means what it has always meant. So chuck all that stuff out, use bicarbonate of soda, safe products recommended by the Soil Association. I mean, I once cured somebody's migraines just by stopping them spraying air freshener.
Wow.
These things can be doing untold damage. And there are so many easy, safe alternatives that you can either buy in a good health food shop or make. You know, some people just make them in the kitchen, just bicarbonate of soda, a bit of vinegar. Some people clean their windows with vinegar. I don't, because I don't want my house smelling like a chippy. But I would just use some really natural washing up liquid. So I've changed from Ecova to Suma's Eco Leaf, because that's even better. Tiny bit of washing up liquid in warm water. Wash the windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then apart from your own books, which book has had the most impact on your life?
Oh.
If you could pick just one.
I mean, I have read thousands and thousands of books. So I'm always excited about the one I've just read.
Or is there one that you'd like to recommend?
There is. I mean, I was asked this before, and I did an Instagram post a couple of years ago about my favourite 10 fiction and non-fiction books, but I've read hundreds since then. Oh, gosh, you're going to have to pause while I think.
That's okay.
The most influential book? Well, it probably wasn't anything to do with this. It was probably a novel, Middlemarch by George Eliot, which I think is the greatest novel in the English language.
Okay.
And in terms of non-fiction, again, probably not on this topic, but Ken Wilber, his book Up from Eden, has been a huge influence on me philosophically.
Okay.
And also Professor Ian McGilchrist, his first magnum opus, The Master and His Emissary, which is about the two sides of the brain.
Okay.
And he's written a new one in 2 volumes called The Matter with Things. And when I get the time, I'm going to go to a desert island for 6 months and read that. So, I mean, in terms of books that have influenced me on this topic, they are listed, I think, at various points in the second book. But yes, Julian, what's his name? An Australian journalist who wrote a wonderful book called Poisoned Planet, which I found very helpful. Only chapter 6 of his book is about health, but I was looking for somebody else who'd written on this topic.
This is the thing.
I wasn't looking to be a pioneer.
Yeah.
I think my new book is more or less the first to tie it in with human health. Although he does that a bit in his 2014 book, Julian Cribbs, I think. And he's a journalist. What's really struck me, though, is that all the books I have found about pollution and what it's doing to, mostly people talking about what it's doing to wildlife.
Yeah.
But we are wildlife too.
Yeah.
We also have an animal body. None of them are by doctors. They're all by journalists. Good, brave, investigative journalists.
Yeah.
But doctors aren't talking about this.
No, I think it's so interesting.
Crazy.
And when I read in your first book, the deep connection that you feel between planetary health and our own personal health and the impact that they synergistically are having together.
Of course.
It's crazy that people don't put 2 and 2 together.
No, they don't join the dots. And the dots have been joined in plenty of learned journal articles, but not in a book for the public, which is why I wrote the book, because we have to put 2 and 2 together, because we have to save the planet. We know this, but we have to be fit and healthy in order to do that. And our brains have to be working properly. And, we are among the wildlife that is, it's not just the trees and the bees and the badgers and the birds. It's us that are dying from planetary pollution. And climate change is not the only hazard.
Yeah.
No, Jenny, this has honestly been incredible. So thank you so much for your time. And where can people find more about you?
Well, my website is drjennygoodman.com. It needs updating. I think websites always need updating, don't they? Mine certainly does. But you can buy either of the books in any bookshop or any online retailer. Now, obviously, you can get them on Amazon. You can get everything on Amazon, but there are more ethical online retailers. And for books, I would recommend bookshop.org because they give a portion of the sales price to small independent bookshops.
Okay.
You give them their address, and whichever bookshop is nearest to you, it gets a cut. So,
And what's your Instagram? Is it Dr. Jenny Goodman?
Oh, I never know my Instagram handles, but they are all on the website.
Okay, fantastic.
I think it's Dr.Jenny_Goodman or something. I don't know. Some of these social media channels have underscores, some don't. I mean, I have a lovely chap managing my social media for him. I write what used to be called the words and now is called content. But as I say, I don't have a smartphone, so I can't post anything.
Okay.
So he does that.
Nice.
Amazing.
It's all there. I'm not really up with the new social media malarkey. I'm too old-fashioned.
I love that you're not.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
and
thanks
your
so much,
wisdom
Jenny,
today.
honestly.
Absolute pleasure to meet you both.
Oh, and you. And I feel like we didn't even touch on a lot of the topics. You talk about so many amazing different things, so maybe we'll have to do a round 2 with you.